Hello and welcome. I'm really excited today. I am with Simon Hewitt. He is the CEO of OtherPay, and we are going to talk about preventing purchase fraud. Hey, Simon, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing really great, thank you. This
Good.
is a really important interview. I'm really excited to talk to you about this because I think that most people are really high at risk, especially now that you and I spoke before we came on here, of being completely ripped off and maybe even cleaned out and they don't even know it. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to jump right into the three like biggest mistakes that everybody's making out there. Are you okay with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Perfect. The one thing that you said that probably jumped out at me the most was that people think that when they're not using their card or their device, if they have their card on their phone, then it's not active and it's all good. But you say otherwise. So can you educate the audience about that little tidbit?
Yes. I mean, it's a simple dynamic in terms of card usage. And part of our campaign, what we're trying to do to educate people is to try to draw the comparison between everyday things you would normally associate with taking a high risk. So whether you're leaving the taps running, you've left the house, you've left the gas on, you leave the car running with the keys in it, all of these crazy things that you wouldn't do. Yet everybody carries a purchase card, whether it's credit, debit card, which is constantly on. Therefore, if I was to take your card, there's a high chance that I would basically be able to purchase something, whether contactlessly or online transacting. So fraud perpetrated that way is done from a card that is basically on how many seconds in a day? 86,400 or something. So you're constantly exposed to that fraud every single second of every single day. So it's just conveying that as a particular risk to everybody, that what you're carrying with you is constantly on and therefore constantly exposed to being used by somebody that shouldn't use it.
So are you talking about the plastic cards in particular, or that and your phone device that you might have an electronic wallet on?
No, I mean, it's more the plastic cards. I mean, plastic cards aren't going anywhere for a long time now. Of course, there are people that prefer the use of digital wallets, but ultimately you may get to a point where that digital wallet is not accepted. Therefore, you've got to pull out the card. So the very existence of the card and the credentials that are on it are usable by a third party. So in terms of extracting those credentials and using it or getting hold of the card to use it, the phone to a lesser extent, you've obviously got a single point of failure. If someone were to steal the phone and somehow they bypass the passcode or whatever, then of course they have access to the cards at that particular point. So as far as a solution is concerned, a card is a far greater risk for somebody to just take and use. A mobile phone, again, there's a risk associated with it, but it does come with the protection of the security that exists on the phone. So there's an element, scalability with regards to the risk of fraud. But the point being is that they are constantly on.
True, you can't turn off a piece of plastic, right?
Oh, well, we'll get to that.
Yes, we will. That's one of
Indeed.
the mistakes that everybody's making, right?
Indeed.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's great. And yeah, let's stick a pin on that because that's actually going to be a really big focus of what we're going to talk about in a moment for sure.
Mm,
I want to just dig into these other two big things that we talked about. The other one is people are focusing on containing the fraud and opposed to eliminating it, because
mm.
containing it doesn't solve it. It kind of puts a band-aid on it. Is that right?
No, exactly. And so from my experience in the industry, there's cybersecurity is one of those ones where, detecting the threat. I'll always remember one time I'd been a chief security officer of a bank a few years, and executive management asked, have all the problems been solved now? And cybersecurity is one of those ones where it's never solved. The fraudsters will adapt their techniques, they'll change. So you're in an industry where it tends to introduce things to make it harder for the fraudster. And my question is, why not fix the problem? And this focus on containment is decades old, and so it seems to have permeated through the industry to an extent where that's what everybody thinks they should do. They think that we're using a product that is inherently insecure, so let's introduce solutions that will help detect whether or not Geographically, that might be the person making the transaction, or behaviorally, let's have a look and see. And of course, with the introduction of artificial intelligence, they try to ascertain as to whether or not, do we think that's really Connie or is that not? And so the transaction is very much a retrospective, do we think that's correct? As opposed to saying, no, that's absolutely who it's meant to be. And the transaction's being made, that's fine. Let's let it occur. So this is a focus of not only the fact that they try to contain the risk as opposed to fix it, but statistically, for every dollar that's lost, approximately $4 is spent on containment. So if you ever see an amount that indicates this is how much lost in financial fraud or purchase fraud, you can multiply that by 5 times to get a real idea of the cost to the banks in terms of trying to keep that fraud down. Does it make sense?
Does. And then of course when banks are paying those fees, it comes back to us the consumers, right? Somewhere, somehow
Well,
we end up paying for it, don't we?
somebody's got to pay for it. And so,
Yeah.
yes, so from that perspective, it's changing an obsession and a mindset of containment to introduce something whereby, oh, we can fix the problem. And not fix the problem by introducing something that's new. If you look at what already exists, 40 million merchants accept cards. You can't come along with another solution which you could say, right, this solves the problem. It will take far too long for that to be ubiquitously accepted everywhere. So we're integrating something in the existing solution that actually fixes the problem and therefore provides an interesting dialogue around the return on investment you could get for using that solution, and then not really having to worry about containment as much as you used to.
Mm. So let's talk about convenience over protection. So I'm in Canada, so we have this crazy thing here. And so I'd love to know your take on it, and if you have the same thing in Australia. But we have
Hmm.
the card, and then we have a PIN code to protect our card. But for convenience, we have a tap feature. But the tap
Well,
feature, you can tap it and not put in your code. So
yeah.
we've gone from convenience of the card to protection with a code to tapping that anybody could take your card and tap it. So convenience versus protection, where do consumers sit on that versus the banks? And how do we protect ourselves? It's such a crazy world.
Well, I think, I mean, you hit on it. As you said, it's a crazy dynamic, but it feeds into this whole aspirational view of convenience, as least friction as possible. And historically, over a period of time, there is no ROI on the idea of contactless payments. It's purely feeding this obsession again with convenience, taking away friction, making it very, very easy. So here in Australia, it may be $200 you can basically spend without having to input a PIN. If you go over a certain value, you'll be prompted for a PIN. But again, we get ourselves to a point where that PIN never changes. So again, you're looking at not only card credentials that don't change. So if somebody was able to see the card details you input, well, they can basically they can go and use those again. Or similarly, if they see the PIN that you've input, well, that's basically given a piece of the security away. And from the contactless perspective, you're quite right in that convenience comes with no security attached to it whatsoever. Now, I know you could sit with an issuer and sort of discuss that they only allow a certain number of transactions. They then force you to do a transaction with a PIN. By that time, a fraudster's gone off and he's tapped the card 6, 7 times, and maybe he's taken $1,400 from you. So from this perspective, I don't believe that fraud should be an allowable cost of doing business. And that seems to be how it's become, is that this drive and obsession for convenience and frictionless has reached a turning point whereby I think a lot of beginning to realize, certainly from the regulatory perspective, is that we are losing far too much. So for this to continue, there's talk now of you've got to introduce some friction. And so this fear that consumers don't want friction, I think, is ill-founded on the fact that consumers want trust, they want protection, and they're not currently being given it. So if you suddenly were to lose that sort of money, again, people will argue that, well, yeah, I'll eventually get it back from the bank. It wasn't my fault. Well, that really depends how negligent you were with regards to the transaction, what you gave away, how it was used. The point being is that even if you did get it back, what if it took 6 weeks? So how do you pay the bills this month? How do you pay the rent? It's all of those impactful things that are not really considered in the context of how convenient is this really? And so we're just trying to challenge that obsession, and I keep on using that word, with trying to change convenience to being one of protection through choice. And so for those that would prefer to have that protection, there is a solution that fixes the problem, which could then just take that fear away. There's the long-winded answer to the question.
That's a great answer. I actually had my bank account cleaned out. Somebody stole my purse, and I don't know how they got into my bank account, but they did, and
Well,
that's
there you
not
go.
convenient. I would love to have had the protection because the time, the effort to replace things, go to the bank with my passport and prove who I am, and man,
Exactly.
if I had something better
Mm.
that couldn't have even happened ever, man, I'm telling you, if people are thinking the way you were just talking, trust me, there's way more to it than, oh well, I'll get it back from the bank
Yeah.
someday. It's a
And
real
I'm really,
hassle.
we're not preying or marketing on those people that this has occurred to them. But independently of you, so it's like it's happened to me. I'm sure if I was to go into the street, 7 out of 10 will probably say, yes, that's I've been spammed or I've been scammed. I've been all of the various things that have occurred. So the question really is asking the issue is your drive for convenience is against a real desire from consumers to protect themselves, but you're not giving them anything to protect themselves. So from our perspective, introducing something that allows the consumer to choose, then that's really where I'm coming from. It's never a one size fits all, and it shouldn't be, because people will use the digital wallets. They will continue to use cards, and there will be continue to be consumers that want protection that comes with neither of those two, or sufficiently for them to be comfortable. So if there's a solution that can be presented to them that eradicates their risk of fraud, takes that risk of something being on for 86,400 seconds a day to the 60 seconds or so that you actually transact with it, but then takes it even further beyond that in that we don't give you a PIN. So if there is a transaction for which you need a PIN, our application will just give you a one-time PIN. So if someone sees the PIN or they see the card detail, it doesn't matter. The experience of shopping very much changes in that I could give the waitress or the waiter the card and tell them to use the PIN. It's like, well, that seems very strange. Bit of a cultural shift. But if once he's done the transaction, he can't run next door to an ATM and withdraw money. It's not going to work. So it's that dynamic that every transaction is exclusive to you, can't be done by anybody else. You have the protection that you deserve. And that's really where we're coming from.
Wonderful. I want to hear more about that, but I have a burning question. Do you recommend people put their card in their digital wallet?
Ooh, it's down to everybody's preference. I mean, of course it
Okay.
is.
All
And
right.
we often
Okay.
get asked the question, what about people that use a digital wallet? That's their preference to do so. There is greater security with a digital wallet than there is with a card. However, there are still threats associated with it. So we have a solution which can cover both. It can provide the protection that you have not only within the digital wallet, but within the card itself. But from a security point of view, I wouldn't argue that no, you shouldn't do that. I'd argue, well, perhaps you should because there's better security there, but it's still not good enough. It's still not good enough because the digital wallet, similarly, is not ubiquitously accepted. You're always going to be pulling out your card for something. So the very existence of the card means that your credentials are there to be used by somebody else. So it doesn't really matter that it's within a digital wallet. It actually exists outside the digital wallet as well. So anybody that gets those details, it doesn't matter that you're using the digital wallet for your payments. They're still defrauding you using the card somewhere else. So you see my point? Is that it's
Yeah,
fine when
I
you're
do.
using it. Yeah, it's fine when you're using it, but you've still got the card in your wallet. So it's still there to be exposed and
True.
used on somebody.
True. So here's my maybe showing my age, but for me, I'm untrusting of the digital wallet. I'm more trusting of my plastic card, which you have just totally blown the water out of my theory completely with what you've just said. All right. You're talking about rotating pin codes and stuff. Um, what do you guys do at OtherPay that's different? How do you protect us then from this? Can you give us a little overview? Because I, for one, am very curious, and I'm sure everybody else is too.
Yeah. So I think we've reached a point where many consumers, the everyday carriers, you'll carry a card, you carry a phone. There, for a number of years that I've been doing this whole convenience that's been built in to having less friction, more convenience, higher transaction, it's like, well, it's sort of it bypassed the view of people using both. So ours provides a mechanism whereby if you can imagine your mobile phone, our application is on your mobile phone, but you can't actually activate that application without the card. The card is a key, has unique technology embedded within it that when you touch the mobile phone, it'll activate this application based on you biometrically authenticating to it. And that's the only point at which you can see a payment screen. And the screen on the mobile phone is simply asking you to tell it, what are you about to do? So if I'm in store, that's all I flick an in-store switch and the card is now turned on. I can do the transaction and immediately it will be turned off. So if it takes me 10 seconds to do that in-store transaction, I've turned it on, it's automatically turned off. If someone was to grab the card, it's useless to them. If I've turned the card on and the transaction's over $200, the terminal will ask me for a PIN. Now I don't have a PIN. So I ask the app for one and it'll give me 1234. I use 1234. The next time it'll be 7659. It'll change every time because, again, the point at which those credentials could be compromised by a fraudster, you want them to be worthless. And the same applies to e-commerce, is that we display dynamic card details, security codes, expiry dates, such that if somebody was phishing or is keystroke capturing those details, again, worthless. You can complete the transaction in complete faith that you're not going to then be defrauded afterwards because somebody has got those details. So OtherPay is just bringing the two together. You have a payment card, which is a key, which doesn't work. At no time could somebody take that card and use it for any purpose. There are no details printed on the card. You won't find card details, expiry date. There's no mag stripe. There's no signature panel. You don't need it. It basically is the key to the application within the phone. And if you don't have the card, you can't actually reach that part of the application on the mobile device. So it is a combination of the two to provide the consumer with complete protection every time they shop. And that's really it in a nutshell. Yes, it takes a little bit of the convenience away, but that is coming from a regulatory perspective. As we look at the extent of fraud, if I was to tell you they forecast $1 trillion in loss in the next decade if we simply carry on the way we are, I just don't consider that to be acceptable. An acceptable cost of business, $1 trillion. That's a hard pill to swallow. So introducing something that alleviates that and prevents it from happening, I think is a good thing.
Wonderful. So, you obviously have a lot of knowledge and a lot of background. So just to help the viewers feel a little more safe and secure with what we're talking about, can you give a little bit of your background? How did OtherPay come around, and kind of what's the build up to where you are today in your industry?
Ooh, well, so my background has always been in cyber security. I started with American Express on their graduate program. That was into audit. So I was responsible around computer audit, cybersecurity at the time. Moved into a role around risk. So within banking, sort of JP Morgan, Standard Chartered banks, but ultimately ended up here in Australia. Back in 1999, I was invited to come here and head up cybersecurity for the ANZ Bank. And then 3 years later, was invited to do the same for the Westpac Bank. There's only 4 banks here. So I sort of got to a point where, having done that for a number of years, my frustrations and personal focus became one on, a desire and a passion to want to fix a problem and constantly see what's going on in a field, particularly around purchasing, where we're driving convenience. Digital wallets themselves are all around convenience. But so are various other solutions that are being implemented. And sooner or later, you have to hit a point where enough is enough. And the amounts that we're losing is just unacceptable. And it's really hit that point now. So not that we've been struggling up until this particular point, but the focus on convenience has then sort of questioned, will customers want to do that? Will they want to unlock? From our perspective, we've always believed, yes, they will, but it's just taken a while for the industry to catch up with us. So we're now at that point where there's a definite crossroads with regards to that convenience being switched for consumer choice, for them to, eliminate fraud as opposed to just limit it. And my passion and drive within the industry to achieve something that does that is really what's been driving me for the past decade.
Mm. So we've talked about the banks, we talked about the stores, and we've talked about the consumer. In terms of OtherPay, who do you service? Who's your client? Because some people watching this might go, how do I get my hands on this? So
Hmm.
who do you supply to, and how does it trickle down to like the end user, like myself, for example? Can you take us
Right.
on that journey?
Yeah, so we have the option of deploying the card ourselves. So here in Australia, we're in the middle of launching a program here. So individuals could take another pay card and choose to deposit their money with our issuing partner. We don't have a license to take deposits or a license to issue, so we're working with a financial partner that is able to issue MasterCard products. So this would be an OtherPay card. Now, you'd have to open an account and deposit money to be able to use the card. So that's fine. If you really, really want that protection and your bank's not giving it to you, you can go and get yourself another pay card. However, we're also discussing with the banks because their threat landscape and the amount that they're losing, we can embed our technology into the cards that you're already carrying within your purse wallet. So embedding that is a fairly simple process. The card, yes, would have to be renewed. So you'd have to get a new card, but it would look exactly the same to you. It's just our technology that's embedded within it will now talk to their application and reveal your ability to sort of turn it on. So we're basically focused on both. We can go directly to consumers, which is great for us. But also, if you look at the market size and how many cards are out there in the market that are exposed to fraud, we're eager to embed our technology within all of them, particularly for those users that use digital wallets. Because if you're using a digital wallet but you then have to come to use that card, it's no longer exposed as it was before by simply sitting in there waiting for somebody to get those details. So it may only be occasional that you need to use it, but you will need to use it. So of course it's not a case of, well, them or us. It's like, well, it's them and us across all, giving the protection you need when it's not basically being used. But we also sort of extend in terms of benefit to a third party, and that is the merchants themselves. Now, the merchants can't dictate what cards you accept. However, we're hoping merchants will see that by allowing, or when they see a consumer using another pay card for a transaction, is that the threat of chargeback basically is eliminated. And by that, I don't mean a chargeback if the goods are not delivered. Of course, that's a legitimate chargeback. But there are chargebacks, unfortunately, a high percentage of chargebacks that are considered sort of friendly fraud. Somebody may just call up and say, oh, that wasn't me. Now, at the moment, the solution is such that it's very hard to argue, yes, it was. And so who loses out here? That the bank loses out or the merchant loses out? In good faith, they've sold a product and suddenly they've basically lost the money because the consumer's charged back. So it's creating a fair, ethical, and sort of transparent ecosystem whereby the merchant's going to know that if another pay card is used, he's not going to get charged back for it, as long as he delivers the goods. Because nobody can then turn around and say, oh, that wasn't me. Because with OtherPay, for it to have not been you would have had to have given away the card, you would have to given away your device, you would have had to authenticate yourself to the phone. So the protection goes always in that our aim is to stop financial fraud as a black market business. And so there shouldn't be a business model around fraud. And if you stop it, I appreciate they're going to have to look somewhere else. But $1 trillion is a very attractive business to basically try to infiltrate. And we want to try and stop that.
Mhm. Yeah, I can see that. So, I mean, we're already opening our phones to use our digital wallet anyway, so we're not really doing anything different than we're not already doing. We're
Well,
just doing it in a
exactly.
different app. Yeah.
But it's also, yes, but it's also, if you look at what's coming, for those that may be familiar with Click to Pay, which is a solution being introduced by the schemes, MasterCard and Visa. And this very much takes away your need to input those sensitive credentials when you're shopping online. So if Click to Pay exists, absolutely use it. Because if you go into Click to Pay, that then you don't have to put any card details in. You probably put email, mobile, telephone number. They can determine whether it was you through behavioral characteristics, etc. They will pass the details to the merchant. You don't have to input them. So there's no way the fraudster can get hold of those details. However, there is one additional step whereby if they're not comfortable with where you're shopping or what you're doing and they want to make sure it's you, they will text you or email you an OTP. That remains, from my perspective, a flaw in that they're using a transport or a communication mechanism that can be bypassed. So with OtherPay, what we're trying to create is, even with the likes of Click to Pay, is that if that OTP is required, we generate it for you. So there's no need to communicate between the two. Ultimately, if it asks for it, just like the point of sales machine may ask for the PIN, well, you'll just say, well, tell me what to use. Because if you can imagine with OtherPay, if I've already demonstrated I have the card, I've authenticated myself to the phone, why would you bother sending me a text or an email? I've already got control of the device. So we talk of increasing friction, but we're also talking about how we can decrease the friction in terms of having to come out of that, go into email, go into Messenger, etc., etc. So it's an interesting dynamic where you can weigh, but ultimately even it out in that, as you rightly said, people already pull out the wallets, they've already got the phone, they've already got card. It's not onerous. We've been through the process ourselves, and it does provide you with that real sense of protection. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so we're very passionate and excited about the direction we're heading. We think we're heading in the right direction. We think we've got it right. Yeah, we're looking forward to what's coming next in terms of stopping this feeding frenzy of purchase fraud.
Yeah, absolutely. I can feel your passion. I can totally feel it. You're the right man for the job, Simon. So
Well,
you're in
thank you.
Australia. Is OtherPay only available in Australia, or because it's an online digital product, is it available around the world? Tell me about that a bit.
No, it is. I mean, it is being launched here in Australia. We are talking to our partners in the UK and Europe. We're talking to US issuing partners. Ultimately, yes, we hope for it to be available, globally. But as I said before, we're also talking to the major banks because ultimately, if there's a major US bank that gets on board and realizes the ease of integration and then deploying this to consumers that are asking for it, that's a fairly straightforward business model in terms of introducing that in such a way that the consumer can put up their hand and say, I want one of those. So our hope in terms of penetrating the markets, and I'll go back to be honest with you, is the banking sector is one where they really are fast followers. You're not going to find many banks that have something that differentiates them so much that people will leave their other bank to join the bank. It's not one of those industries where you really get something where everyone's like, oh, I want that, because as soon as that arises, or as soon as that sort of point of differentiation exists, then everybody will introduce it. So our hope from that perspective is if a number of banks introduce the solution to eradicate fraud, is that you'll get other banks turning around and saying, well, we're going to do the same. So I hope that sort of answers the question in that we are hoping to bring OtherPay as a branded product to various other territories. But our drive is also to get the banks that are already there to start looking at the technology to offer it to their own customers. And that would logically be the quicker way of doing it.
Right, right. Well, I can't wait for it to come here to Canada. As
Thank you.
as people are watching this, there's a lot of people out there that are maybe a little skeptical, and they just think that fraud is just part of the game. It's just part of what it just happens.
Mm.
So what would you say to them? How do you arrest them at ease and let them know that there is a better solution? Uh,
I think that sort of goes back to one of the original points you made, is that this complacency with regards to it being an acceptable cost of business. A lot of people have said to me previously, and it was interesting the point you made, because others have said, it's like, if I get defrauded, it doesn't matter, the bank's going to pay or the merchant's going to pay, I'm not going to pay. And so it depends how you look at it. And again, from a viewpoint, there are some people that look at it that way. They like the convenience of tap and go. They don't really care if they get defrauded because somebody else is going to pay for it. I can't change that sort of mindset, but we are reaching a particular point whereby in using our solution, um, you do protect yourself, but you also protect the bank, admittedly. You protect the merchant that you're shopping with. So, from an ethical viewpoint, in terms of wanting to use something where everybody is protected, it's you're playing your part. So, for those that sort of are skeptical and think, nah, it's a cost of doing business, it shouldn't be a cost of doing business. And ultimately, we would all benefit if ultimately $1 trillion is not being lost to fraud over the next decade. That's not all going into the pockets of the shareholders of the banks. That's going to flow back through in terms of reduced fees, interest rates, etc., etc. That's fundamentally where it will go. As a collective benefit of reducing that, we collectively benefit as a result. So I hope that sort of answers the question in that, yes, today it is an acceptable cost of business. Or I would say yesterday it was an acceptable cost of business. I don't consider it to be considered that any longer. which is why we find ourselves in the position we're in, and people are really leaning in and listening to what we now have to say, because there is a solution to the problem, not another piece of technology that will contain it a little bit better than the solution that contained it last year.
Right, because we want to eliminate it, right? I mean, that's what OtherPay is all about is
Exactly.
eliminating the threat with your
Yep.
triple check, and you gotta have the card, you gotta have the PIN, you gotta have the phone. Um,
Yes. You have to have it's as you yeah, it's eliminating it. It's not limiting it, it's eliminating it. And generally speaking, from a containment perspective, if you introduce something, these people are clever. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they're very, very clever. And if you're not addressing it from the point of view of saying, right, I want to fix it in such a way. I'm not sitting here and saying that somebody couldn't get hold of this, but the manner in which they'd have to get hold of it to get the device to biometrically authenticate all of the various steps. Not only that is that, okay, let's say they did that and they got all of this in one transaction. Because if they think they can go and use the same details and the same PIN and the same credential, not going to work again. But the point is that you suddenly have that ability to protect in that I have the phone, I have the card's in this pocket, I don't need a PIN, biometrically authenticate. If someone steals the phone, useless. Someone steals the card, useless. You're just adding additional layers of protection that currently don't exist. And if I'm sitting and talking to somebody, if it's used the way it's meant to be used, you've eliminated fraud. Whereas today, if it's used the way it's meant to be used, you're still exposed to fraud. So there's a slight difference. It used to be years ago that it eradicated fraud, but the fraudsters worked out how to bypass it because you're looking at a single point of failure. You're looking at a card. And if it's not combined with something and you're using the same PIN every time and the same card details every time, of course you're exposed. So another interesting point for those that understand payments, and they talk about card present and card not present. With OtherPay, there is no card not present. You can only do a transaction if you actually have the physical card with you. So this concept of card not present. So if I took your card from your bag, write the details down, put the card back, you don't realize it's been stolen, but I can go and do a transaction online. With OtherPay, you can't do that. So it's a subtle difference within the industry, but I do find it interesting that about 90% of purchase fraud is from card not present transactions. So as I said, with OtherPay, there are no card not present transactions.
well, you just proved my theory from off the top when I said you can't secure a piece of plastic. Now we can. Now we can. It's like a
Yes.
piece of plastic with a firewall. I love it.
Yeah.
So good.
Yep.
So good. You have dropped so much information here. I want to give you the floor for 2 moments as we wind up this interview. Is there any last minute pieces of information that or a little tidbit of encouragement you'd like to give the viewer as we close out this interview?
Oh, a tidbit of encouragement. I'd say, I mean, I thank you for I thank you for the time. I think we've really covered a lot of the points, but it would be interesting and dare say entertaining that we've tried to create some collateral to educate consumers in a slightly different way. So the one thing I would ask is if people go to the otherpay.com website, go and have a look at the Duo card link. That is the launch of our product here in Australia, but they'll find a series of 5 interesting videos, which, unlike anything you'd see in financial services, it presents the threat in a very different but very entertaining way. And we hope through those particular videos, people will begin to understand that as they walk through and consider things they would otherwise consider to be common sense, will realize that the way we currently pay today is illogical. And why are we continuing to do it that way? So my sort of takeaway would be to ask people to have a little bit of fun, go and look at the videos, and see if that sort of resonates with you in terms of what we're trying to do.
Great words to leave by. Thank you. And yes, if you are watching this, besides what Simon just shared right below this video, there's a link for you to click on. And that'll take you away to get all that information as well. And get connected and put a firewall on your plastic. I mean, I don't know.
Yep.
I can't encourage people that enough. Thank you so much for your time today, Simon. It's been really eye-opening. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed myself. Thank you.